Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to our second IT Job Family speaker event this year in this lovely brand new auditorium. Today, we've got a wonderful discussion with Eran Kinsbruner from Perfecto Mobile, who's going to be talking through maturing your path towards continuous testing in DevOps. I want to welcome everybody that's in the room, so thank you for attending today. Also, we have people on the webcast around the world that will be watching and also on the replay. And we also have a live VC link up with Raleigh. So I hope people in Raleigh can hear me. So Eran's going to do a talk today on maturing the path towards continuous testing in DevOps. Eran is the author of two books, which is the Continuous Testing for DevOps, Continuous Testing for DevOps Professionals, and the Quality Digital Handbook. And is also the Chief Evangelist at Perfecto Mobile. So I think it's fantastic to have Eran here today as part of our second IT Job Family Speaker Series event. There will be time for questions at the end, and we'll also hand over to Raleigh as well for those questions. At the end of the session, at the back, through those double doors, there's an ante-room, and we will have tea and coffee served through there as well. And as you noticed when you came in, you received a raffle ticket to win a free book that have been brought in today as well. And one last thing I've been asked to remind people is that Eran has a space reserved from 4:30 this afternoon in Pagination. So if you want to go along and have a drink, and also if you don't get a book right now, you'll certainly get a book then. So, all right. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Eran. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me at the back as well? Good. First, thank you, Michael, for inviting me. Truly excited to do, and I think it's my first time delivering not a live session, but a live session which is also being video conferenced to the US and also other places. So thank you for the opportunity. As Michael introduced me, I'm a chief evangelist and author at Perfecto, almost 20 years now in the area of testing. Started mostly from mobile, but then also looked at healthcare industries, hardware, software, Sun Microsystems, GE, you name it. And for the last 7 years, I am dealing with testing in the cloud, continuous testing in the cloud with Perfecto. And trying to actually mature organizations that are struggling to be DevOps ready or mature DevOps. I am all over social. I have my own blog called continuoustesting.blog. Not that creative, but that's my website. And the book that Michael mentioned, the latest one, Continuous Testing for DevOps Professionals, actually talks about what is continuous testing, and I'm going to touch about the definition as I see it for continuous testing, but it's also divided into 4 categories. One directed to mobile application testing, the other section is about web application testing, and the final section is about machine learning, AI, and the future of modern testing as we see it today. And I'm going to touch in this session also, at least the last part of my session will be around using machine learning and artificial intelligence in testing to actually boost your test automation coverage for mobile and web. Okay, and I think Michael mentioned it. It can be and maybe should be an open conversation. While I know that it's a very complex setup here, feel free to challenge me to ask any questions. I will also try and challenge you guys with at least 1 or 2 questions of my own. So feel free to be involved. So I will start my session today defining what is continuous testing the way I see it. People are using and sometimes even abusing the term continuous testing, confusing it with agile testing. They are close, but in my mind, they are not really the same. So I'll define my point of view on continuous testing. Then I will talk about some of the challenges and disruptions that I see today that are blocking DevOps from being what it should be, a fast software release vehicle that involves all the practitioners, both developers, testers, ops, POs, product management, everyone needs to be involved in one, I would say, synchronized method in releasing software, and it's not like that in many organizations that I meet, and I meet them on a daily basis. So I will try and touch on some of the challenges, but also not just say that the world sucks. I'm actually going to talk about some things that I believe can be implemented to solve some of these challenges. As mentioned in the last section of this presentation, I'm going to talk about machine learning, AI, and codeless testing, and how codeless testing, in my mind, can complement the code scripting method in a DevOps reality, and actually give an opportunity to business testers, manual testers, to be part of this entire DevOps cycle. So before, and you can read from this slide, but if anyone here in the audience can say what he thinks continuous testing means. Don't be shy. To do what? You're testing continuously to do what? What's the objective behind continuously? And what is the feedback aims to achieve?
To make any fixes required quickly and get back out again.
Yeah. So that's perfect. The only word that I'm missing here is risk. Okay? Basically, continuous testing that delivers fast feedback to the developers, to the organization, to the business, aims to identify quality-associated risks that are tied to the latest code changes. Code changes can be bug fixes, can be new features, a full iteration, you name it, okay? So there are a lot of disruptions that are happening in the pipeline. If you continuously test them, you highlight, you identify risks for quality. And continuous testing sometimes is being confused with high testing coverage, high test automation coverage. Coverage is a critical element in continuous testing, but it's not the most important thing. So I visited this week Lloyd's Bank, and over there, they were saying, okay, we need 100% test automation coverage. Everyone is challenging us to have 100% test automation coverage. And I think that's not what continuous testing means. That's not the end goal, okay? Because you don't have time, okay? When you release on a weekly basis, you can't run 100% of your test automation. You need to run 100% of what's relevant, okay? The right test cases obviously needs to be automated, but this is the scope, this is the coverage that you want to strive to run to identify the right risks. If you just blow your pipeline, run through the Jenkins, through the CI, hundreds and hundreds of test cases, and you're not getting value out of the entire 100% test cases, you're wasting time, and you're actually adding more noise to the pipeline, which already exists. You don't need to make much more noise than it's already there, okay? So this is not new, and we are all in the financial industry, but I think what this slide means is that continuous testing today is harder than we actually used to see. It's not because testing is hard. The digital transformation is happening and continuously evolves. We have seen 2 days ago Apple releasing 2 new iPads. A month ago, new foldable smartphones that were launched by Samsung and 2 other major device manufacturers. What does foldable devices mean? Okay, you figured out how to test mobile native applications on a smartphone and on a tablet. Now you need one platform with maybe one application that can work on a smartphone, which is a hybrid device. Okay, and when you fold it, it's a smartphone. When you unfold it, it's a tablet. Okay. Do I need one application version? Maybe it's 2 application versions. How do I automate it? Okay, so, and most of our users are going to go with this device. Okay, this device is not going to be cheap, but this is where the challenges are coming. This digital transformation doesn't stop, and even if you figure it out and you have good automation, it may break because a new smartphone comes up, a new form factor. We are hearing about the 5G that is becoming mostly adopted. Australia, I think, is the early adopter in the world today that started distributing 5G networks. It has meanings to your end users from an end user experience perspective, from quality perspective, performance, and so forth. Progressive web applications. Anyone started hearing about progressive web? Yeah? Progressive web basically is a responsive web which has advanced capabilities like mobile. So actually, you're going to, let's say, creditsuisse.com, or if you want to go to a progressive web, go to ebay.com. ebay.com is a progressive web. When you go to that, you have an offline caching mechanism, which means every time you are offline, you can still interact with the app from a mobile device. If you get notifications, push notifications from the application, from the website, you will see them on your mobile device, even when you're offline. This is the future, okay? So it was a responsive web up until a few months ago. Now it's progressive. So you need to start testing more complex scenarios that involve both mobile and web capabilities. So that's what I mean by it's never been more complex, because it continuously changes and evolves. If I can ask you another question, what is today's your biggest testing challenge? You know, I know that there are many. One of the biggest things that you are coping with today, time, automation. What would you say?
Test data up here.
Excuse me?
Test data was mentioned up here.
Test data? Okay. Maintaining test data, making it more accurate and relevant to where your production is. Okay. What else?
Validating infrastructure that's created from infrastructure as code.
Okay. How does it impact your testing? Or how does it complicate your testing? Okay. Okay.
Alain, you'll have to repeat for the folks in the back.
What's your name, please? Phil. Okay, Phil was talking about testing infrastructure and infrastructure as code.
When you add infrastructure as code, it
Yeah.
produces artifacts, and how can you automatically continuously test what's produced from that?
Yeah, yeah.
It could be on private or public cloud.
Good, good. So I think we are all in agreement that testing in the digital space today is quite complicated. And when you are putting testing in the lens of DevOps, DevOps means can mean continuous deployment, right? Someone wrote a line of code. Immediately, you want to be able to automate the process of building, validating, deploying it to production. And when we are dealing with infrastructure as code, testing and validating the artifacts coming from that, dealing with progressive 5G, new phones, new websites, all these new technologies, you need to have a machine, an engine that runs constantly, okay? And again, it's not about the coverage, it's about the value and the fast feedback to identify risks associated with all the things that we are producing. Unfortunately, and that's from interviewing and visiting plenty of customers all across the verticals, financial, retail, media, and entertainment. I work with telcos like Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile. They all suffer from the same thing. They kind of figured out the DevOps story. They know where they want to go, but without really offending us as testers and practitioners, testing is the major thing that is slowing down the entire pipeline, the entire delivery cycle. And sometimes it's about skill set, sometimes it's about time, sometimes it's about the environment that is not available for them, the scale and the coverage that we are tasked to cover per each iteration. So there are a lot of, I would say, excuses why it's not working, but in reality, that's a huge problem to mature DevOps. And some of the outcomes that you can see here is that a lot of testing, when it happens at the end of the cycle. And we talked about risk, right? You want to identify risk. You're actually creating risk when you're testing at the end of the cycle, because you're not really testing everything. Some of the tests are not even being automated, so they either take too much time, or when you're doing manual testing, it's a lot of error, human errors, misunderstanding of the business flows. Manual testing has its own pitfalls, we know that. So that's mostly what we see in today's reality. And as an average industry, what I'm seeing about 50 to 60% test automation success in the mature organizations. 50 to 60% means about 40%, give or take, is done manually, okay? 40% activities which are done manually in a pipeline, in a DevOps reality, it's something that doesn't mean DevOps. It's not DevOps, okay? It means that you're doing half DevOps, basically, because you're neglecting few things, you are avoiding testing some things which are important, okay? You're taking huge risks here, okay? So it's not that bad because I think it's solvable. I think there is a path. That's the talk today, maturing the path towards achieving continuous testing. And before I talk about the path, I just want to give you, two examples which I see, Perfecto is a cloud vendor, so we have devices in the cloud serving major customers. And in the cloud, these smartphones are being used by enterprises like you guys, but they have the control, because it's a private cloud, they have the control over what they're testing. And I see a lot of times test engineers, test automation engineers, and manual testers not paying attention to details. This is not a small detail. If you have a software update on your smartphone and you're not really obviously you want to test on the previous one as well, but if you're not making sure that you're catching up with the market, you're testing on the latest and greatest operating system, so again, it's another element of risk that you're taking. So it's about not just taking the approach of automating and doing continuous testing, it's also dealing with the infrastructure that you are testing against. Okay, making sure that all the platforms that you're testing against are up to date. Okay, you're running on the latest and greatest. If you have things that are unique to devices, on mobile you have 3 types of logging into the app, right? You have the traditional user password on older devices, you have fingerprint on some devices, and you have Face ID for newer devices. In some Android devices, you actually have Face ID and fingerprint embedded in one. You need to take this under consideration when you are designing your test automation framework, your test automation scripts, so you actually do some kind of a branching between your test cases so they're targeting the right device with the right capabilities. Okay? When you have one script that assumes that everything is user password or just fingerprint, and suddenly it needs to run on on a Face ID, it will obviously break. That's your entry point to the app, and you cannot even go into the device. Automation fails. Okay? It's as simple as that. So the DevOps process should look like that, removing all the reds that we've seen in the past, in the previous slide of testing. And to do so, you need to start small. You need to start the right way. What we have seen in many places, and I've seen it also as a practitioner in my past when doing testing, management comes and say, okay, let's automate everything. Let's get high coverage. Let's put it in the build nightly cycle and move on, right? That's what they will say, because they think big and they think about fast results. This is when things break, okay? Starting actually small, making sure that you have a good foundation, a reusable foundation that you can scale up after you've seen that it works fine in the pipeline, in your CI, produces consistent results, okay? We've seen too many times a test that runs inconsistently. Runs once it passes, once it fails, you lose trust. You lose trust in your test automation, and you either stop using it or you continue using it but wasting time on noise reduction rather than identifying risks. The right approach is to embed into the continuous integration, into the pipeline, a small chunk of test cases, then build on top of them the coverage, and then increase coverage and run it continuously so you get consistent feedback. And most organizations actually follow the previous method, and that's one of the root causes for failures, especially in the digital era when things changes. So one fail can actually, or one change can actually lead to a major disaster. So in my mind, testing today in DevOps can become a huge value to developers, both to the product management and the product owners, rather than be a liability. If the test cases, and that's when I started to talk about less coverage, more value, okay? When you focus on the test cases that brings you the highest value, the consistent one, that's when you're starting to improve. That's when you're starting to see that you are getting fast feedback. That's the goal of DevOps, getting fast feedback, moving on to the new iteration, the new innovation. So to do so, or to reach there, going to the previous statement that I said, start small and grow. Building a stable test automation, create the script, maintain them. Maintenance can be a nightmare, especially when you're working with code. Okay, think about Selenium, Appium, Espresso, XUI test. These are all heavy coding technologies, coding frameworks. So when you are developing using these frameworks and you're not thinking with the end in mind, that you need to maintain them as things change, as objects are shifting, changes are happening with screens and flows, it will take you ages to fix everything. So start small, make sure that you have the right foundation for a test automation, then build on top of that, and think about reusability, okay? We neglect and we see a lot of duplications in test automation because everyone is reinventing the wheel, okay? If you're working as part of a team and there are some reusable components that you can leverage as part of your test automation design, okay? Build them from the get-go and not get notified at the end that you have X amount of frameworks, X amount of test cases that are doing the same thing. That's when you go increase coverage, increase scalability. And when I'm talking about scalability, it's not just about the platform coverage, like more Windows permutations and more Samsung and iPhones. This is also a given, but also the time it takes you, okay? When you have a good and robust automation, you can run it at scale, and let's say you run in parallel 1,000 test cases. When you run it on 10 VMs, it will take you X amount of time. When you run it on 100 VMs, suddenly you shrink the time 10 times shorter. So that's when you reinvent your automation and mature it, okay? Make sense? Good. So, since this talk is about testing, and while we see a lot of cool logos that everyone is familiar with, from development to building and monitoring as well, and I'm sure that most of you guys are working with a set of or a mix of these tools. Today is about the testing piece, which in my mind is kind of broken. So to do so, I try to divide or define the continuous testing, the DevOps team, into 3 personas. And keep me honest if you think that there is a 4th one which I missed. But from what I've seen up until today, we are dealing with 3 major personas. The business testers, sometimes they're called QA testers, manual testers. They're, in my mind, under the bucket of business testers. These guys are very professional testers. They understand exploratory testing. They understand the business flows of the application end to end. They see the full picture. They think like the end users, like your customers. And this is a good thing. The only thing that they lack is the ability to write code, okay? It's not a big deal in some cases, but they're not writing in Java or JavaScript or Python or all the other development languages. They can do a lot of manual testing, or they can work with some BDD tools, Gherkin, Cucumber, which is fine, but they're not really developers. The second persona is the SDET, the test engineer, test automation engineer. And this is a developer in test being integrated, pulled into the feature teams, squads, whatever you call them, as part of your DevOps journey. These guys work with Selenium, with Appium, WebDriver.io. They sometimes can also build their own test automation frameworks in-house and patch them and expand them as needed. These are highly skilled test engineers, but they lack, in my mind, all the ISTQB, the testing language, testing lingo, and they're not always thinking with the end in mind. They're not thinking like your end users because they want to automate a flow. That's what they care about. They're not always thinking like your customers. This is when I was talking about the business testers, these are the guys that actually think like your customers. And then we have the software developers. Traditionally, people hear developers and doing testing. They say, okay, these guys are doing unit testing, right? API testing, which is good, which is fine. In mature organization, we see them. In some organization, we don't even see that these test cases are being developed by developers because developers have one slogan, just let me code. They want to move from one feature to the next. They don't want to waste their daily cycles and activities developing test automation. But in the DevOps reality, they are also part of a team that develops and delivers value to your clients. So they need to be pulled also into the testing. And we've seen in, I say, most mature organizations, especially in the mobile front, these guys are taking responsibility of using Espresso and XUI test because these frameworks are actually built in and bundled into their IDEs. So it's a very easy jump for them to work and develop XUI test because it's from Xcode. They know Xcode. It's in their zone, if you like. So it's straightforward. So we see that as well. But again, they're not really thinking about the full end-to-end cycles. They're looking at their own feature and functionality. So that's, in my mind, that's the landscape that should take care of quality, okay? Should own quality. There is the testing management, which owns quality responsibility, but these are the different practitioners that are doing test automation development, manual test execution, and so forth. Any persona that you think I missed? Good. Unfortunately, these personas, when you divide them into a cycle, into a pipeline, and that's in my mind the unoptimized model, these guys, the business testers, are a huge question mark because they don't fit the cycle. Okay? Why they don't fit the cycle? Because they are tasked with a lot of manual activities, okay, which is either late in the cycle, okay, until the time they get access to the features and the new implemented code, it's too late, okay? So sometimes they're not even included in the conversations. And this is a big miss. This, in my mind, this is the 30% test automation coverage that we are missing in the cycle, in a very continuous testing mature model. Because these guys, the SDETs and the developers, maybe they're doing more than unit testing and build acceptance testing. Maybe they're doing some non-functional, security, APIs, it's fine, even later in the cycle. But these guys own, in a success rate, between 50 to 60% of the test automation that we need to achieve. This is not good enough. Okay? We are missing here, I think the market is missing here a huge opportunity by not leveraging these smart people that can actually complement what's missing and actually bring the voice of the customer to the table. I think the voice of the customer is often left unheard because skill set and time prevents it. Would you agree? You can say that you don't, it's okay. Okay? So, in my mind, this is how an optimized model in continuous testing in DevOps should and can look like. Think about the high-skilled guys, the test engineers and the developers. They can continue and they should continue doing code-based activities. Selenium, Appium, Espresso, XUI test, API testing, SOAP UI. Throw everything that has code in it into this bucket. You will get to this 50, 60%, it's all good. Put these business testers in the loop, include them in the loop, make sure that all the flaky and common test failures that you are seeing, the inconsistent results that you are seeing, are being bucketized, being identified, and placed under these guys' ownership responsibility. Okay, that's the first step. Once you identify that, start looking based on the skill set and the fitness to the platform, whether it's web or mobile, if these guys can start working with Cucumber, BDD. There is Selenium IDE now that's out there, codeless testing. There is our solution, Perfecto Codeless, which is available for web, okay? And put this 30% into action. Again, like continuous testing, don't start and, okay, I want to automate in this bucket all the 30% cases that are either manual or not executed at all. Start with the 5% of these test cases. Do a small win, make sure that they have confidence, make sure that these test cases are now part of the CI, part of the cycle that these guys are owning, okay? And start having this marriage running for like few days, few nights, make sure that you're getting good value out of them. And if it works, it won't work in all cases, because it depends on technology, the fitness to the process, the timeline, the skill set that these engineers have, etc. But in my mind, this is a huge opportunity to start closing the gap in test automation that this industry, if you read any report, either from Gartner, the World Quality Report that is coming out every year, says the same thing over and over again. 50% test automation, 60% test automation. I think that the organization are kind of sick and tired of hearing this number, and they want to break this barrier of 85, 90% test automation. And I think this is, in my mind, the only way that I could find up until today that can break this barrier, because there is a lot of flakiness by definition in testing, okay? Objects are changing, the platforms are changing, new features, time constraints, and you know, the people themselves, us, okay? We don't have the will, especially developers, to do so many testing, okay? They want to move to new features. So with that in mind, this is the only way that is available today. Maybe in 5, 10 years from today, we'll think about something else, and I actually can tell you what's going to happen, or my prediction is in what's going to happen in the next couple of years. And it, by the way, is, in my mind, going to grow this bucket, maybe taking more like 60% of the test automation, because it will be so AI machine learning driven that you will only need to point an engine, a tool, to a website, and based on a lot of artifacts that the engine knows how to process, it will actually automate the entire end-to-end scenario for you, and it's not that far away, okay? If I had my laptop connected, I could have shown you a live demo of your website, by the way. I played with it last night, running end-to-end recording of an exploratory test on Credit Suisse, you know, and it's getting there, okay? So in my mind, this is kind of the evolution of continuous testing, putting all the personas, all the practitioners on the same page. And oh, by the way, manual testing is not going away. Never. We do have specific cases that we do want to execute manually, but these things won't be required on a nightly basis, okay? This is not part of your CI in any case. So you can identify these cases that you run each iteration in a given time slot that doesn't disrupt or doesn't interfere with the overall release cadence. So let's double click, if you like, on what is codeless testing, what is the modern codeless testing as I see it, going back to the opportunity for the business testers, okay? And codeless testing isn't new. We used to have HP, QTP, UFT, Tricentis of the world, that was recording and playbacking a lot of test cases from the UI. But what was the problem with these kind of test cases and tools? They were all static tests, okay? Immediately as something changed on the app, an object, you are done, okay? You need to go back, re-record it, maintain it. It's a nightmare, and obviously it doesn't fit the model of continuous testing, okay? So this was the old modern, the old kind of tools. The modern tools that we see today in codeless are now featured with machine learning and AI algorithms and engines that can identify all the objects as soon as they see the screen. It only needs to see your website. It can read the entire DOM, all the objects, the CSS, the XPath, whatever the developers is putting, it's available for the engine to work on. The only thing that is missing is the full automation thing. That's the deep learning, the deep AI algorithms that can run end-to-end scripting for you. So we are still requiring with codeless today the business tester. And why? Because this record and playback is mostly exploratory. Who knows to do the best exploratory testing? The business testers. They see the end-to-end scenarios. They know how to get from A to B to Z. Whenever and whatever changes that are made to the user stories, these guys understand, okay? This is why they are best positioned to take this codeless to the next level and actually create zero maintenance test automation that can fit into the CI. These tools, this wave of tools that we are seeing, there are tools like test.ai and Apply tools, our own newly developed solution as well, that are coming to the market. They all have the same standard functionalities, okay? Data-driven testing, conditions, visual assertions, and other validations. They are all part of the same, solution, but the thing that they have, again, other than the ML and AI capabilities, is the ability to connect to the CI or to the cloud. And we know that all of the organizations today are working with cloud solutions, with third-party tools, integrating with other solutions like databases and stuff, and analytics tools. So the connectivity to CI and other tools, this is something new that we see in the codeless era that can actually support today's needs, which weren't available in the past. And I think the most important thing here is that these test cases are complementing the code-based testing, the Appium and the Selenium of the world. So this is not coming to take place or take the place of the coding activities that are happening, but rather complement what's happening today towards a higher degree of test automation. With that in mind, and that's kind of marching towards the future of testing, we need to keep in mind that when you're trying to combine two processes, which are by definition different, codeless and code-based testing, test development, you need to be alerted that there are major differences. Okay, these differences are all over the place from a test creation and authoring perspective, skill set, time it takes to execute. So you need to actually synchronize when you're moving to things like codeless and machine learning tools. You need to synchronize because these tools will create scripts. It took me less than 10 minutes yesterday to do an exploratory flow on creditsuisse.com. To write it, the exact same scenario in Java using Selenium on the desktop web would have taken me, if I'm a very expert developer, 2 hours. In some cases, if it's very complicated, can be 4 hours. Okay, so it's obviously it requires a lot of high skill set in Java, but the flow itself, the process itself, is longer. So we need to think if we're going to adopt such model in continuous testing, and again, that's in my mind the future of testing. How do we synchronize the processes towards having one CI, one pipeline running all the test cases, both from the Selenium part and the codeless part, delivering the fast feedback at the same time. And there are many other differences. I won't go into each and every bullet here, but the UI is obviously different. The source control management with Selenium and Appium obviously works with Git or other tools. Here you're working with a different UI. Okay, so there are other differences. The maintenance is much greater on the code-based testing compared to the codeless. And if you look at tool maturity and documentation, obviously the Selenium of the world is highly documented. You have plenty of code samples in Git and other repositories. There aren't many best practices other than the one that I'm trying to develop these days to codeless testing and how they can actually fit the DevOps cycle. So there is a level of maturity gap between these two tools, and also what they can accomplish. Obviously, when you're doing open source testing, you can do more API testing and security and non-functional testing. When you're doing codeless testing, it's mostly focused on the UI, on the end-to-end flow, exploratory testing. So it's a different type of testing that you are doing, but still, it's a lot of testing that is done today manually or not even at all. Okay? So that's a nice summary slide for the previous point. No one competes here. It's not a competition between one approach to the other. It's actually a joint thing, bringing these personas together toward a more efficient continuous testing flow, taking codeless, code-based, business testers, SDET, and developers working together towards a very high degree of test automation with as little maintenance as you can think, because you already removed all the flakiness from the code and moved it to codeless. So that's how it all connects. I put here some, just few best practices on how to do, or if you're thinking about this path towards codeless plus code-based with your continuous testing, and it's web and mobile, it doesn't matter. Identify the manual and flaky test cases that can feed these business testers, okay? See from your history, okay, which exploratory testing we're able to find from a value perspective the highest degree of defects in production, as part of your cycle, doesn't matter. Make sure that you have this bucket of test cases as candidates for the codeless approach. Once you have them, okay, start the small thing, like I mentioned in the beginning, and put tagging, okay? Make sure that you identify the test cases so when they are running as part of the CI and you're getting the feedback, you know where it's coming from. It's coming from Selenium, it's coming from codeless, it's coming from, I don't know, other tools that you are using. It's important just because if you want to grade the most valuable test cases and you want to prioritize, you will know where to start and how to filter your test execution pipeline. The smarting is already bundled in the machine learning and the AI, so you get it as free if you like. Obviously, it needs and it can connect to your CI, but again, only once it's mature. You don't want to get noise back to your CI after you excluded it. So make sure that only when it's stable enough, you put it back in the CI, but you will see a boost in your productivity, in your test automation coverage, and obviously, with your time to market, the release time will obviously go down. And like any other maintenance, you're doing maintenance to your car every 6 months. You're doing refactoring to your test automation code whenever you need to do it. Also, when you're dealing with codeless, you need to identify maintenance points, because even though maybe objects are not the issue anymore with codeless, flows, new changes to the UI, and so forth may interfere or cause some flakiness in your codeless. So also keep that in mind. And I think this will be like the 5 basic things to start with. Obviously, there are much more documentation and other considerations, but if we are starting with that as a beginning, I think it can be a nice breakthrough for test automation coverage. So before I move to a word about what we are doing and some other pieces of continuous testing, and maybe a case study of one of our customers, USAA, how they select their DevOps strategy. Any questions so far or comments? Here in the US, any questions from the US?
What's the ratio of codeless to code tests that you would recommend? Typically, let's say 100% is the total test that we are running. What would you think would be a proportion you would recommend as a practice?
Sure, it's a good question. So the question was the ratio between codeless and code-based, or if there is a recommendation. So if assuming you have about 30 to 40% of your test cases that are manual, and there are the candidates to move to codeless, I think that this is kind of where I would start with. But let's say if you have much lower test automation success, because 60% is the highest that I've seen so far, especially when I'm dealing with digital, mobile, and web, I would sometimes see 40%. So you have actually a bucket of 60%. So again, I would say, and I hate to say depends, but it really depends on the maturity and the success that you have today as part of your automation. In some cases, you don't have a good test automation framework. You don't have the developers taking part or part of the load of doing testing. So I think it brings just a larger opportunity for codeless to take more coverage, because eventually you will see codeless as it matures taking more and more pieces of coverage from your test automation pipeline. So again, it's not really a black and white here. It depends on the quality and the application and the skill set. And by the way, if you have a new project starting today and it's not a legacy thing, maybe start 50-50, okay? Say, okay, I'm mixing my risks, because testing is a risk. Test automation in general is a huge risk, because you develop it and it's not a one and done. You develop it and you continuously need to maintain it. Otherwise, you're not getting the value out of it. So putting a 50-50 on a new project is not such a huge risk to take. It actually makes sense to me.
How would you avoid duplication in codeless testing?
Excellent. So I think that when you're looking at codeless and code-based, okay, that's why actually also to avoid duplication, you need to actually put some tags in your test automation. Okay, this is codeless by definition, and can be codeless underscore login, codeless underscore the business flow that you are trying to automate. And think about it, when you're doing codeless, you're recording and playbacking the test cases, so it's more like an exploratory flow, end-to-end flow, rather than just testing something which is more structured scenario that you're doing in Selenium or in Java in general. But in my mind, the best approach, regardless if you're doing exploratory or structured test automation development, use tags. Put a tag codeless versus not codeless with a descriptive name, so you know that it's checked. Okay, you're not going to go back to it. And if it's different in web and in mobile, actually also put the target up in the name as well. Otherwise, it will get lost. I'm dealing with customers who are executing hundreds and thousands of test cases overnight. If they're not putting or using tagging in JUnit or even codeless supports tagging as well, it's very hard to filter, slice and dice data and analyze the results. So it needs to be kind of proactive. The bottom line, it needs to be proactive as part of your test design, so you know that you're not duplicating, but also you can filter back and analyze when something is failing.
So you mentioned about maintenance of the code. Essentially, so it all works good, 50-50 to start with, or any percentage. When we are initiating a project, right? And every project has a phase. It goes to, let's say, certain development. It goes, and there is a high volume of work. But eventually, down the line, let's say 1 year, 1.5 years, it goes down, the activity on the project, but still there are some minor modifications or certain enhancements which is needed. So are we not creating dependency on two type of skill sets? One, which is a codeless scripts, and second, which is pretty much like based on the coding. So how do we handle the maintenance? Because let's say a project cannot afford when they go in the lean period of time,
Yeah.
they cannot have people with both the skill sets. So essentially, then it becomes my maintenance nightmare. Either you maintain the codeless script or you maintain the with code script. So how do you handle in the examples that you have, or the projects that you have already dealt with?
So it's a great question. Just repeat the high level of it. Talking about test maintenance between the two different approaches of code and codeless as the project evolves. Because as you mentioned, it requires two different skill sets to maintain two different test types. So since codeless is kind of a new beast in the market, but one that can actually add more value that was missing, I don't think that today there is a very good process in place that says, okay, every week, every month, I'm putting some checkpoints, check marks to do refactoring of code versus codeless. Okay, so I think it goes back to your process. Okay, I don't know what's the process today of updating your Selenium scripts, okay, or maintaining your Selenium scripts. I think that, as mentioned, it's not a structured methodology yet, but in my mind, if you're executing the scripts, let's just take the code, the Selenium. If these scripts are executed nightly, it means that they're A, adding value, B, they're still relevant. Okay, so by definition, if something is wrong there, you don't need to maintain them. You will get the feedback that something is broken, and you go back, exclude them from the CI, fix them, and throw them back. Okay, that's not the case that you're talking about. We're talking about test cases that are probably not being executed daily. Okay, that's when you start to think, okay, do I still need to maintain them? Do I need to have these checkpoints or not? And I think that depends on, okay, what's your next release of software that you're going to use them. Okay, if you have this visibility into the roadmap, and you know when these test cases, because again, this case is mostly when you're not running them nightly. You know the roadmap, you know when is the next iteration of software. Put, I don't know, a month or 2 months beforehand to re-execute them, plan them into a separate CI, if you like, against the oldest version or latest version that you have, and try to identify and pull up all the issues that you might have. Okay, so I think to summarize this answer, you have two methods here: one with ongoing tests that are always executed, and the ones that are sitting and waiting for a new software iteration. And for that, you need to have good visibility into the roadmap so you can plan these maintenance points, because you wouldn't just execute them and waste time if you don't see a 6-month release coming up. Okay, it would just be a waste of your time. Okay, sure. Any more questions here or in the US? I heard something. Okay. So I just put something that is specifically to Perfecto from a coder's perspective, because again, it's not a marketing slide, it's just the point of view that was in front of the product management at Perfecto before they decided to move and add coders, because Perfecto supported Selenium, Appium, all the code-based frameworks for the last couple of years. But adding this codeless thing came mostly because of the effort of maintaining and adding reliability to the test cases, and also the setting up. Okay, setting up a Selenium grid with maintaining the Java and the code and everything takes a lot of time. So trying to address the zero setup, the easy ramp up to learn and automate things, to record with a high reliability of object identification. All the things that you are seeing here on the screen, the fitness to the process, to the CI, and so forth, running in the cloud. These are some of the considerations that led Perfecto to move to that method of codeless, and that, in my mind, I think is a good and great match and complementary thing to the code activities that are being happening or used in the market today. So, still going to the different personas, you have the QA, you have the dev. Each have its own, I'd say, pain throughout the pipeline. But at the end of the day, each persona cares mostly about different things. And if you look at the key pillars in DevOps and continuous testing, and I will just focus here on continuous testing because that's the session, it's the 4 words that you see on the left. It's creation, execution, lab, and analysis. When you figured out these 4 things and you have them in a very well-managed and maintained way across the different personas, you are in a good place to move and mature your DevOps. And there is something we are calling the DevOps friendly zone. Okay? The DevOps friendly zone means that when you have the ability to create scripts that are reliable and can run on a daily basis, and the developers can execute at scale to reduce the time for feedback in a reliable lab that is always up to date and not have this software updates pop up that someone is ignoring. And it doesn't take you, I spoke with a customer who is spending 72 hours to just analyze his regression suite. He's executing 1,000 test cases, sometimes like on a weekly basis. Spending 72 hours per each iteration just to analyze a report is time that you don't have, okay? Especially when you're moving that fast or you want to move that fast. So analysis is also, and that's when we are going back to these tagging activities, making sure that we know which result and which test is delivering which value, so you can filter, slice, and dice, and move faster with root cause analysis and bug fixing as well. So I would say these are the 4 pillars for good continuous testing in DevOps. And when you match the technology and the process to the personas, and we know that we are 3 personas now, I think you're in a good way. That's the path, in my mind, towards continuous testing in DevOps. I will skip some of these benefits because I think they all make sense. I do want to give you, and there are more inside the book, but I get often asked, okay, so how do you measure? How do you know that you are in a good place? Okay? So there are just few things, and this is not a measurement to blame or to find someone which is guilty. It's all to actually continuously improve what we are trying to accomplish. Okay? Release software with confidence, identifying risk fast, and releasing fast. So how is the level of flakiness that you see today in your testing? How many builds are broken? The mean time to find and resolve issues. These are just a few examples that I'm seeing all across the board by many enterprises, many organizations that are marching towards DevOps. A number of user stories implemented per iteration. Why it's important? You know, okay, are you able to move fast enough, or you have productivity issues that might be inside your development chain or your testing activities? So these are just few broken builds based or filtered by categories. What caused the broken builds in your CI? Which branch is mostly flaky, if you like, and these kind of things. So there are a bunch of measures here that I think that if you want and if you are serious in marching towards DevOps, you need to have a set of metrics. And I'm sure that you guys are using some metrics. I hope that you're using some metrics in your productivity, but you need to continuously use them and measure so you can improve, not just to find someone who is guilty, because that's not what we're trying to do here. So at the end of the day, and with that I will conclude the session, you need to be successful in continuous testing in DevOps. I mentioned in the previous slides what you want to have. But at the end of the day, we are all human, we are all people, taking aside the machine learning and AI, which is less human, trying to be. So it's a merge of people, process, and technology. Everyone heard these three, I'd say, magic words. But this is the reality. If you are not able to match your people, the three personas that I mentioned earlier, to the right processes of software development and releases, you know, by giving them the right tools to be successful, eventually you will fail. Okay? It's a cultural thing, it's a process thing, and of course technology can support it, but this is kind of a state of mind that we need to keep in mind to be successful, and of course taking measures and making sure that we are on the right track every day, every path, every stage that we are marching forward is required. With that, I will conclude. I do have everyone that is here and online and on video conference will get the full slides. So I have a few more examples of how USAA kind of selects the tools, but it's close to what I've described. You know, they look at the tools landscape as a freeway. You can have toll roads, which you need to pay. These are the commercial tools. They are tools which are open source, but bringing them all together that match, so they can match people, process, and technology, that's what they believe is the right approach for their business. So with that, I'd like to thank you guys. I know that we exceeded a few moments, right? But if you have any other questions or more questions, I'm here and happy to address them.